Alright, welcome back to Flight Sim 2020 and welcome to a beautiful morning here in New Plymouth, New Zealand. And a very special video today. As you can see, we are in the brand new ATR 72600 in one of the coolest liveries ever put on any aircraft. The all-black New Zealand livery is one of my favorites. So as you know, the ATR just released, and the plan for today is to take a flight from New Plymouth up to Auckland and kind of give the ATR a test drive. So full disclaimer, I'm not a real world pilot. I have no experience on the ATR. Since it's just released, I haven't had time to kind of study all the systems and go through all the real world procedures. So this is going to be just a kind of basic A to B flight here, doing kind of just the essentials in the aircraft. I have done one test flight in the ATR to kind of figure out how it works and things like that. But yeah, that's the plan for today's flight. So now all that's left to do is jump aboard and start getting things set up. Alright, so here we are on board the ATR. If you're just getting started with the ATR, you can follow along with the procedures that I'm going to go through. Again, I'm going to leave out some of the more complex things and some of the more involved, like systems tests and stuff like that. We're kind of just going to do the basics that we need to get the plane in the air and down on the ground safely once again in Auckland. So first things first, we're just going to double check a couple of things. So we're going to make sure that our power levers are in ground idle, which they are. We're going to check that the gust lock is in, and we're going to check that the gear and flaps levers are down and up respectively. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to come up to the overhead panel and let's get the battery on. And we're going to be running on ground power to start off with today. So let's go and get the GPU. And while we're here, we'll open up the doors so that our passengers and crew and cargo and everything can board. Right, the systems are going through their own self-test now. So what we need to do is come up here and switch off all of the white lights. So anything that says off, we're going to switch on now, except for the pitos and except for the fuel pumps. And in fact, we can kind of do the fuel pumps, because normally what we do is go through a whole bunch of tests before we turn on the fuel pumps, but we're not going to do all of those today, so fuel pumps can come on. Okay, external lights. We have the nav and beacon lights on by default. I'm just going to turn the beacon off. We don't need that on just yet. And then we are going to do a hotel mode start. So we're going to put the prop into... so we're going to put the prop brake on. Now, what hotel mode does is it allows us to start up the right engine, however, without the blades spinning. So our right engine kind of functions as an APU, so we can get electrical power and bleed and all of that from the engine. It's just that the prop doesn't actually spin, which means it's not a danger to the ground crew. Of course, today we are at a gate that faces out towards the taxiway, so we don't need pushback, which means we could kind of just start up on stand anyway. But in a prop aircraft like this, you don't want to push back with the props turning, because obviously that's a huge danger to the ground crew. For now though, we're going to be running on GPU, and we'll start up engine 2 in hotel mode just now. So in order to prepare for that, we put the prop brake on, and that's what's going to stop the propeller from actually spinning on the right engine. Okay, now we can come over here and turn on the no device seatbelt signs and arm the emergency exit lights. Okay, now that the GPU is there and connected, we can go ahead and accept the GPU power. And now the rest of our systems will start going through their self-test. Okay, so the self-tests have now completed. We're obviously going to have a bunch of warnings there because we haven't started everything up. But what we're going to do now is double check that our parking brake is set, which it is. And what we're going to do now is come down and set up our FMS. So we're going to go to FMS 1, go to initialize, and we need to put in the position. So our current GPS position we can load up there and initialize that. And now we're good to go. We can go back. Cool thing about the ATR is this is how we do our weight and balance. So here on the weight page, all we have to do is put in the information from our Simbrief plan. So our zero fuel weight today is 20.4. So sorry, we need to do this. 20. Cool. And then our fuel on board today is 2300. Load that up and it'll do the calculation for us. And this has now actually applied this to the aircraft. So if we go and check our fuel, we should have 2300 on board. Gross weight 22700, which matches there. So that's all we have to do to load up our fuel and payload in the ATR, which is pretty cool. Okay, we can then go back and initialize our actual route for today. So we are going from New Plymouth to Auckland, like so, and we can execute that and then come in and start putting in the rest of the route. So we are departing today from runway 5, which is over here. And it is the Harv... Is that Harvey? What's Harv something? Harv 3 Papa, there we go. Let's put that in. And then we can go down and... I like to do the departure and arrival and then kind of fill in everything in between. Probably not 100% the correct way of doing it, but it works. Okay, we're landing runway 5 as well in Auckland, and we're doing 5 right. Which is this guy, and it is the which one? It's Pepe, and it is 9 Delta, which is this guy here. Right, let me just double check here if we actually do have a transition. No, we don't. Cool. Right, now we can come through here and we need to fill in everything between Harvo. Oh, it's not Harvey, it's Harvo, that's it. So we go into Harvo, and now from there we are following an airway, so we can fill that in over here. So we're going to go H, and it is 479. And then we can put in the next waypoint, which is Dadak. So we'll put Dadak in like so. And then we can just choose that we are going all the way down to Dadak like so. Okay, and then from Dadak we go Yankee 273. That's interesting. I don't know why it's left a gap there, but it should be okay. We're going to... That's when we go to Pepe. So... Oh. Let's just get rid of that. That shouldn't have stayed there. Okay, so I've just had what appears to be a bug with trying to enter multiple airways and waypoints. The FMS just crashes. On the whole aircraft kind of just crashes. So we're going to try this again, and we're going to just do one airway and waypoint at a time and see if that works. So again, from Harbour we have H, what was it now? 479. So if I put that in under airway, that's fine, and then we need to go to Dadak from there. Okay, that looks okay. And what I'm going to do then is just execute that. Then let's go back and see that it's put that in. Okay, it has. Then we'll go in here to Dadak and just play it safe and do Yankee 273. Okay, let's brought that back up again, but that looks better. Before, it kept leaving like a space in between and then it would freak out. So this looks better, but we need to put in Pepe as the last one, and let's see if that works. That looks fine, and we can execute that. Okay, so that is our route done now. Let's go back and just check that those match up, so we can actually just get rid of this. So I suppose we could actually get rid of one of these. That should be better. Okay. Right, so that might be a bug currently with the ATR. I tried it twice, and both times that I entered multiple waypoints, the whole FMS locked up and the whole aircraft locked up and everything. I had to restart the flight. But anyway, we've got our route set up and good to go at this point. So now what we need to do is, at this stage, we are pretty much good to go in terms of starting up our engine in hotel mode and running off of our own power rather than the GPU. But before we do that, let's just set our altimeters, and then I want to show you one of the cool features of the ATR is that the checklists are actually built into the aircraft. So the way they've set up the ATR for Flight Sim is that these screens actually have click spots all around them that do different things. And if you want to know where to click, you come in here to the tablet under options and go to display click spot help, and it shows you for each of the displays where you need to click to perform certain functions. The built-in checklists appear over here, and we can use up, down, and validate, and we have recall on that side, clear. We can go to the menu and we can manually delete items that appear there as well. So what we're going to do is come down and actually go through the checklist. So we need to do final cockpit preparation 1 and 2. So I'm going to use the down button, which is over here. And this is going to take some getting used to and a bit of practice to get the right click spots, but I've actually found it to be quite intuitive. I'm going to make mistakes for a while, but it works. I think it's quite a cool system. So if we go down to the bottom, that's validate, and that's just letting us know some information about the systems. So we can validate that, and then we can carry on down to cockpit preparation 2. Now what's cool is the aircraft automatically puts the checklists up here depending on your phase of flight. So at the moment we should be dealing with all these issues, but those issues are only there because we haven't finished starting up the aircraft. If I click that, that'll stop flashing. As you go throughout the flight, you'll see the checklist will appear there, and we just have to activate that, and then we can go through the different items like this. So parking brake is set, altimeters we've set, landing elevation we actually do need to check. So our landing elevation today in Auckland is 23 feet. So I'm going to flip the landing elevation selector over to manual, and 23 is closer to 0 than 50, so we'll leave it on 0. I'm not sure if the FMS landing elevation actually works. For me, it hasn't displayed any numbers there. I'm not sure if that just means it's pulling from the FMS. So I've been using it in manual mode for now. Okay, then we've finished setting up the FMS. We've double checked our fuel quantity, 2300, and we need to reset the fuel used. And that we do over here on this side. So if we come down here, this little screen at the bottom, we can actually switch between a bunch of different options. So we can set our comms radios, we can do nav radios. This is also where we do the TCAS. If you're looking for the TCAS, we can switch it on and we can set our code like so. But if we come a little bit further back in the cockpit, we also have a bunch of systems here. So we've got the ND systems page, performance, MISC, a video, I think that is, which is, the video of the, is that just the cargo hold? Is it just the back? I think it's the cargo hold behind the cockpit here. So you can see if there's someone at the door. And then we have a map, which is really cool. So you actually have a built-in airport map right on your, or right here in the cockpit. But we want to go to performance, and here we can reset our fuel used, and we can also confirm our takeoff data. Before we do that, we need to go into performance and just double check that all of this is set correctly. So is our transition altitude today actually 18,000? I don't think it is. It's 13,000, so let's just change that. I mean, this actually wouldn't affect the takeoff speeds, but we can check here, speeds for non-limiting runway, that's all set. And if we go to this side, we can input our cruise altitude, which today is 17,000 feet. Max cruise, and that's all cool. Our alternate today is Wellington, so we can put in like so, and we will cruise down to Wellington at flight level 220. Okay, so we can put that in. We're not expecting to have to divert today. The weather in Auckland looks fine. If we were, we would set up our diversion route as a secondary flight plan, but I'm not going to go through that at this stage. So now if we come back to performance, that is all good. We have normal over there, and we've got our V speeds. And again, if we go back to the screen, we can now confirm that takeoff data. It sets our speeds for us, and it sets our takeoff torque values, which is what the aircraft is going to use, obviously, when we take off. So the other thing I want to do is just get rid of this guy. Is just come across here and set our speeds from manual into auto, and that's going to follow the VNAV speeds throughout the flight. Right, then if we come back here, let's finish our checklist. So we've double checked, we've reset the fuel used. Okay, we've checked everything on the memos, which is here. This is all fine because the aircraft's off, and our power management is set to take off. Right, we've now completed that, and you can see the next checklist underneath is before propeller rotation, but we have some steps that we need to go through before we do that. So we double check, parking brake is set, and we double check that signs are on. We've reset the fuel quantity, and we've checked our fuel matches over there. Altimeters are set, and we've completed the checklist. Okay, let's make sure that prop brake is on, which is something I forgot to do after I restarted the flight. This is why we have checklists. And now we're going to start engine 2 in hotel mode. So we're going to pull this down to start A and B. I believe the procedure is for the first flight of the day, you use starter A and B, and thereafter throughout the day, you alternate between A and B. This would be the first flight of the day. It's a nice early morning here, so we're going to use A and B, and we're going to go ahead and start up engine 2. Okay, because the prop brake is on, the actual propeller isn't going to spin. And now what we do is we bring this guy up to FTR, and we should then see our engine spooling up, and we have prop brake on, letting us know that the propeller won't spin. And now our engine is actually starting up, and as you can see, the prop is still stationary. Okay, and that's actually going to provide us power once that is stable. And we'll wait for that to stabilize, which it has. And then we can go ahead and set this back to off and abort. And we can disconnect the ground power. And then we can come back here to aircraft. Oh, let's just close this, come back to aircraft. We can get rid of the ground power, and then let's close everything up because we're pretty much ready to go at this point. Right, we have confirmed our takeoff data. All doors are closed, and now we need to sort out the cockpit doors. So there's actually two doors for the cockpit. There's these on this side, and then that just leads you to the cargo compartment, and there's another door over there that takes you through to the cabin. We need to make sure at this point that these are closed. And then if we come down here, we should have no lights here. If they are open, that will light up. I can actually just show you that quickly. So if we open up this door here, we'll see that we get an orange open light. And at this stage, we want to make sure that those are closed, which we've done. Seatbelt signs are on. We can turn the beacon light on now. Nose wheel steering off if we require pushback. The nose wheel steering is down here. We don't need pushback, so we can leave it on because obviously we need that when we taxi. Now we need to come down and do the before propeller rotation checklist. So let's scroll down to that checklist, activate that. Right, cockpit door locks, that's what CDLs is. That's on because those lights are out. We've set up everything in the FMS. Trims, we need to go and just set our trim for takeoff. And we hear the horn saying that we're continuously trimming. So I'm just setting the trim inside the green bracket, and we're going to set it to match that little magenta detent. So trims are done. The tail prop is on board. That's the little, stick pole that prevents the aircraft from falling over, because everyone boards the plane from the back. I can actually show you what that looks like if we just go and put it back in and we jump outside. there it is there. So if we happen to have too many people standing at the back of the plane, because this is the door to get on, even the pilots come in through this door. There's no door in the front. It's the cargo compartment in the front, and this is just to stop the plane from falling over. Anyway, we have that on board. Kind of important. We do not want to try and take off with that still attached to the back. Doors are all closed, seatbelts are on, and beacon light is on. And now we can go ahead and start up the engines properly. So what we're going to do is release the prop brake, and if we have a look at our engine now, it has now started to rotate. And what we can do is come down here and set the condition lever to auto, and now our engine will start spooling up properly. Okay, while that's happening, we can come and now turn on the probe heats. We can set the flaps to 15, which is what we use for takeoff. And then we should by now have the engine stable, which it looks good. And we can go ahead and start engine 1. So same thing, over to starter A and B. Starting engine 1. And we'll come down here and pop this into FTR. We'll let that start spooling up. And we can bring that into auto as well. Okay, then we also need to double check that we have low pitch over here, which is what we need when we are taxiing, which is perfect. We can now come down here and sort out our transponder. So, oh, I don't need to go down there. Transponder is over here. We can turn that to on, and let's just set our code, which obviously we would have got from ATC, but we'll put that in now like so. Okay, nose wheel steering is on. We can now go ahead and do the before taxi checklist, and we can see that that one has popped up here for us to do. So let's accept that. Okay, FWS recall, that button is over here. So we're going to click to recall. Nothing has showed up, which means everything is good. The cockpit hatch is closed. Both condition levers are in auto. Anti-ice is not required. TRU, we can go over here and check that that looks good. I'm not 100% sure on what that actually does, but for now, that's fine. We'll learn about that in a bit more detail as we spend some more time flying the aircraft. Okay, anti-skid test we're not actually going to do. Flaps are 15, nose wheel steering is on, and that checklist is complete. Right, now we're pretty much ready for taxi. Let's go and turn on the taxi lights. And then what we need to do, which I probably actually should have done before we started up, is just set our altitude. So we are going today up to 170, so 17,000 feet is our cruise for today. Okay, like so, and then we'll go into VNAV and IIS. And we also want to do nav, but we'll put it in heading mode to start off with, and then on the LNAV, so it'll actually take over once we intercept. And then we want VNAV IS like so. That works. Altimeters are set, and that's all good. We actually leave the yaw damper off for now. Otherwise, I think we are good. Okay, so autopilot is done. We do need to test the takeoff config, but before we do that, because we need to release the parking brake and actually start taxiing to do the takeoff config, because obviously it's going to complain if we have the parking brake set, because that would be bad when we are trying to take off. Let's just check our taxi route for today. So we are taking off runway 5, so that's actually very simple. We are going to go straight ahead, Now, can we use that taxiway, or is that too small? I think, let's jump outside and actually have a look. It's a gorgeous looking aircraft. Okay. That taxiway is definitely not something we're going to use, and it also actually doesn't go. According to the charts, there's a taxiway down there. Interesting. Okay, so we're just going to backtrack on the runway then, nice and simple. Okay, well, what a cool looking aircraft. I always feel like the wings are very, I don't want to say small, they're very narrow. It looks like that's hardly going to do anything. But anyway, there's some other traffic up there. Right, let's then release the parking brake. We're going to drive over this marshal, but that's their own fault. They're always in the way. Not real marshals, I mean marshals in flight sim. Sorry, we just shredded her. But anyway, we'll just ignore that. And let's now release the gust lock and do our takeoff config test, which is a bit difficult to do from here. Now I'm going to taxi into the grass, which is not what we want. Okay, so let's just slow down a bit here. And do this quickly. Okay, there's no red warning that comes up, so we are good. Right, we're about to enter the runway, so we're going to do lights and strobes now already. Okay, and we're going to turn right down this way. Okay, while we're doing this, we can go through the before takeoff checklist. Okay, let's just zoom out a bit so we can actually see where we're steering while we do this. That's a bit difficult to read. Okay, takeoff briefing is complete. Gust locks are removed or is off. Flight controls checked. Transponder we've done. What's that? Airflow is checked. Cabin crew advised. Engine bleeds are set. Is that takeoff config? Oh, exterior lights we have done. And rudder and lateral flight director bar, those are both set. Okay, so now we're good to go in terms of checks while takeoff. Oh, here's the other taxiway here. On the chart, there's one that joins those two, but that's too small for us anyway. Okay, so the other thing about the ATR is most of our power settings are going to be done in what we call the notch, which is over here. And because that's a bit difficult to see when you're trying to fly, they've added some hints that come up here. I don't think that happens in the real aircraft. So what we're going to do is, because our power management is set to takeoff and we have our takeoff torques set, we're just going to advance the throttles to the notch. Now, I find it a little bit kind of finicky to actually get it in the right spot. So it might take a couple of attempts to get it to sit nicely in the notch, but that's what we're going to do. And we're going to pretty much leave it there until we get to cruise. And depending on our weight and all of that, I found that sometimes in the cruise we can actually just leave it in the notch as well. Well, I say this with my one flight of experience in the ATR. But we'll see how things go. So, all we have to do next is set the power levers to the notch and then go ahead and take off. Right, so we'll release the brakes. Let's advance the power. You'll see there the top left corner, it now says manual, and we should keep advancing that until it says notch. Okay, there it is. Let's just keep the aircraft on the runway while we do this. And now we're just looking for our rotation speed. There's the aircraft will probably want to fly just before you get to rotate, like so, which is pretty much perfect there. And there we go, we are airborne, positive rate, we can bring the gear up. And a little bit of turbulence down here. Okay, let's go and get the autopilot on to give us a hand. And let's just double check. We are now in LNAV and VNAV IAS. That F is our flap retraction speed, so we're going to wait until we get above that point to bring the flaps up. What we can do now though is, I'm not sure exactly when you would do this. If we look at the FMS, what speed are we going to follow? So we can flip this over to speed. We've still got quite a way to go before we advance. Are we currently at... Oh, we're currently at 122. So what I'm probably going to do is wait until we hit the waypoint where that speed switches over to 170. And then that will allow us to speed up over the flap retraction speed. And once we pass that and bring the flaps up, I will flip the power management over from takeoff to climb. Probably not the right way to do it, but that's what I'm going to do, just so we have a bit more power to get us up to that flap retraction speed. Okay, what I can do here is go and flip this back over to nav, and we can see that waypoint is where we will switch over to a cruise speed of 170. Sorry, not a cruise speed, climb speed of 170. But there we go, lovely, beautiful early morning departure out of New Plymouth in New Zealand. Okay, this is actually taking a little bit long, so let's go and set our speed over to manual, and we can dial it up to 170 ourselves. And then once we've passed that waypoint, we can flip it back to automatic, and then let the FMS do its thing. So now we're going to accelerate up past the flap retraction. We can flip the power management over to climb like so, and now the aircraft will automatically manage the power so that we get climb power, and we can obviously retract the flaps. Now that we've got the flaps up and we're in climb power, let's go and do the after takeoff checklist. So landing gear up, flaps up, power is set to climb, engine bleeds are on, taxi and takeoff lights are now off, and altimeters 1027 set. Okay, underneath here we actually have a list of all the emergency, normal and abnormal procedures. So if you want to go and see the normal procedures at any point, those are the checklists that we're going through in order anyway. You can actually at any point go through and choose one of those checklists, which is pretty cool. Right, we've just passed that waypoint, so let's see if we set ourselves back to automatic speed selection. We should be at 170, and that's perfect. On this, to zoom out, we can actually just use the top of the screen and the bottom of the screen to zoom in. So if we want to zoom out, we can just click at the top here, and that will zoom our nav display out. Okay, I'm going to sync up our heading here. And we are powering along nicely, climbing at about 1600 feet a minute. And of course we're going to be going all the way up to 17,000 feet. And heading up to Auckland. Okay, so we do have takeoff calculations. It just gives us our VE speeds based on what we put in the FMS. The FMS gives us the same information as well. And when it comes to landing data, we can put in reverse or no reverse and the condition of the runway, and it will tell us based on our weight. You can see that coming down because we're burning fuel. It'll tell us what length of runway we need, and also pulls our available runway length from the FMS. So we can see Auckland's runway is 12,000 feet, and we only need just over 2,000 of that to actually land. Right, what are we coming up to here? An altitude restriction. Okay, so you can see the speed is now running away with us because we're leveling off. So now we can bring the throttles, or not the throttles, the power levers, back to manual and start slowing ourselves down. So again, another aircraft with no auto throttle. The computer will help you manage some of the power settings based on the power management selector, but there is no auto throttle per se, so we're going to manually control the power levers here to keep our speed. It's actually Harvo that we need to be below 9,000, so we've got quite a way to go before we start our climb again. So I'm actually just looking at some information here. So we would technically set our power management to climb at the acceleration altitude, which makes sense. So actually I think we did it a bit late. Okay, we are 2 minutes out from Harvo, which is our 9,000 foot altitude restriction. So once we pass that, we can obviously continue our climb up to 17,000. No clouds at all to speak of. Okay, just under a minute to go to pass that restriction. And we're coming back now over the island, and we'll stay over the land all the way up to Auckland. So once we hit Daddock, we make a slight left to kind of follow pretty much parallel to the coast all the way along. I wonder if those aircraft are actually coming into Auckland. No, maybe not. They're quite high for that. Okay, let's get a little bit of power in here because we've slowed back down to 170. and we want to just keep that. I'm just going to keep making slight power adjustments to make sure we stay at around 170 knots. And this aircraft looks like it's actually coming this way. Yeah, so that's going down. Maybe to Queenstown? I mean, it could actually be Christchurch or Wellington as well. A little bit of haze over the land, but nothing concerning. Beautiful morning. Okay, we've passed that restriction now. Our aircraft should go back to climbing. I think we need to put in notch power again to do that. And there we go, cool. So we are now climbing. Let's just get it in the notch, like so. Perfect, and we'll make our climb up to 17,000. So if you've watched my other videos, you know that I like to give you a bit of a cabin view, normally with the engine, while we're cruising. If you haven't watched my other videos, welcome. But in these aircraft, it becomes a little bit difficult because we need to manage the power ourselves. There's no auto throttle. So we'll see how it goes. One thing we didn't do is turn off the landing lights. That's bad. Because we just went through 11,000 feet, so while we were looking at the engine, I should have actually just been turning off the landing lights. These reflections are a bit interesting. It's like someone's hand there. And also this wobbles about a bit. So there's a couple of small issues. I think the FMS thing might be a bit of a significant bug or problem at this stage, but hopefully that'll get fixed fairly shortly. Otherwise, I'm really enjoying this aircraft. This is actually the first high fidelity ATR I've ever had for any flight sim. I think there was one for FS 2002 or FS 2004. I don't remember there being an ATR for FSX. But yeah, very cool aircraft to be able to add to the hangar. And I think if you enjoy the CRJ, you'd probably enjoy this aircraft as well. There's some similarities in how it works, like the auto throttle or lack of auto throttle and things like that. Maybe the BAE 146 a little bit as well. Although these systems are a lot more advanced than the 146. When we get the the RJs, we're going to get some more kind of digital capabilities, if you want to put it that way. The CRJ has some pretty advanced systems, so I think this probably compares the most to the CRJ. If you don't like flying the CRJ because it doesn't have an auto throttle and things like that, maybe this isn't the aircraft for you. However, I must say, for the price, I think this aircraft is well worth it. I mean, if you compare the price of this to the CRJ, this is quite a bit less expensive, and we've got some decent systems capability here, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with the ATR so far. I'm quite keen to fly the 42. Obviously the 72 is the stretched version of the 42. There's not many airlines operating the 42 anymore that I could find, but I don't know, I quite like the little guy. It looks pretty cool. So we'll see if we can find some routes to fly the 42 as well. New Zealand or Air New Zealand, I don't know if it's actually Air New Zealand or Air New Zealand Link or one of those, but they actually do operate the 72. And this is a real world flight for Air New Zealand as far as I'm aware. Right, according to the aircraft, we should have reached 17,000 feet already, but we haven't. Oh, is that the top of descent? Should we actually be descending? Oh, no, there's top of descent there. Okay, so we're a little bit late on reaching 17,000. Wonder if it didn't take into consideration that... It should take that restriction into consideration. I was a little bit late after the restriction to power up and actually get climbing, so that could be a factor as well. But we're now just under 500 or just over 500 feet to go. And we're coming up to Dadak, so we're almost just about halfway on our flight. Nice short flight. First introduction for my first video on the ATR. I do plan to go through the systems and procedures in more detail and try and do another video on the ATR where we try and go through everything and check to see what you know, systems tests and all of that are actually modeled in the aircraft. But like I said, planes just come out, so I'm going to need some time to go through that and learn how everything works before we can do that. Right, let's flip our power management over to cruise now, because we're at 17,000 feet, and you can see the FMS wants us to go up to 245 knots. I'm going to leave the power in the notch. Hang on, why are we turning left? Right. Okay, let's just go into heading mode here, because that's not supposed to happen. Wow, it wants to go back that way. That's weird. Okay. Let's get rid of this and do that. And that's a lot better. Oh, what's just happened there? Okay, so maybe a couple of bugs to deal with. Let's go back into nav and get us back on track. Cool. Good thing I wasn't staring out the cabin window and giving you guys a nice view, because that would have been a bit of a problem. Oh, the other thing I missed because I'm talking is I didn't set standard when we passed 13,000 feet. And that's going to change that significantly. Okay. Back on track. So there's our top of descent. So what we can do now is start briefing for our arrival. So we are landing runway 5 right, and we'll be doing the ILS into Auckland. Okay, what I do want to do quickly Let's just fix our altitude discrepancy here, let's put it that way. Okay, so our ILS intercept altitude is 3,000 feet. So once this has sorted itself out, I can actually bump that up quite a bit. Once that's sorted out, we'll dial our altitude selector down to 3,000 feet. And then, I believe the aircraft should auto-select the ILS frequency. So we can see the ILS there is set to auto. So when we get closer, it should automatically select our ILS frequency, which is... not on this chart, because I opened not an ILS, I opened an RNAV. Where's the ILS? Okay, and that makes me want to double check here. Looks fine. We'll keep an eye on what it looks like as we get a bit closer. But let's bring that chart up now. Okay, our ILS frequency is 110.3. Oh, we actually came back down. That's interesting. Right, don't mess with the Q&H. Should have said that when we cross-transitioned it. Okay, let's dial this down to 3,000 feet. Okay, and we'll keep an eye on our ILS frequency. That should set to 110.3, and our course for the ILS is 51 degrees, which we'll have to set manually up here. But because we're in FMS mode, the course doesn't actually change anything. Once we flip over to ILS, we can then set the course to 51. Yeah, not far from top of descent now. Once we arrive at Auckland, we're landing 5 right. And we will then vacate probably Alpha 7, maybe Alpha 5, depending on how bad my landing is. I found this aircraft quite twitchy, and supposedly it is quite a difficult aircraft to land smoothly, I think. So we'll see. We should probably depart Alpha 7, maybe Alpha 5 if we're bad. Maybe Alpha 5 if the landing is bad. And then we will taxi via Alpha, Bravo 5 to the domestic terminal. Okay, so fairly simple taxi procedure as well. Right, so this is what I encountered on my test flight as well. So we're in cruise power mode, and I've left the throttles in the notch, and we're sitting fairly comfortably. The FMS wants us to go all the way up to 245. We're not going to get there. We're sitting comfortably at 231. We have a little bit of a tailwind, so I reckon might actually be fine most of the time. Obviously, we need to keep an eye on this as we go. If we have a hectic tailwind or something like that, it will be very, very light. We don't want to overspeed, but it seems like we might actually just be able to leave the throttles in the notch and the power management in cruise and not have to worry about the throttles, which takes away a lot of the workload of flying an aircraft like this, or the CRJ, or the BAE 146. So So maybe it's not quite as annoying to fly as the CRJ can be when it comes to throttle management. I mean, for the record, I love the CRJ. The 146 is probably my favorite aircraft to fly. But I can see this being up there as well. I'm really enjoying this. Okay, we're pretty close to our top of descent. Let's see. We now have our vertical flight path marker. I don't know what you would call that. It's the vertical deviation. So we are still in VNAV, or are we? We're not. We're in altitude select mode. So I don't think it's going to do this on its own. If I go into VNAV now, it's still VNAV alt. Let's see what happens when we hit top of descent. Okay, that's now, I thought it was dropping, but it kind of isn't. Now that it says VNAV alt, let's see if it'll descend on its own. Right, it has. Okay, we definitely now need to throttle back or we're going to overspeed for sure. Okay, we don't need to go all the way back to idle. That should be decent. Let's go and do our descent checklist. So, recoil checked, landing elevation is set, FMS all looks good. Oh, decision height we did not do. So let's come down here, and this is a bit of a scrolling simulator. So we need to be at 200 feet. Okay, I'm not going to scroll, I'm just going to click and hold. But yeah, it's going to take a while. Okay, there we go, 200 feet set. Okay, that's fine for now. Alright, we're descending, 230 knots, all looking good. Oh, we should probably finish this an arrival briefing we've done, nice and simple. And approach we will do once we set our altimeters. Transition altitude at this stage is also 13,000 feet, which we're coming up to quite shortly anyway. Okay, just keeping an eye on the speed as always. Can start bringing power down a little bit. Okay, we've passed through 13,000 feet. Seatbelt signs are on because I actually forgot to turn them off. Landing lights are not yet on because we're not at 10,000 feet yet, but let's do this. There we go, 1026. Okay, so we'll wait until we pass below 10,000 feet, or pass through 10,000 feet, turn on our landing lights, and then we can complete our approach brief. power back a little bit more. So this is the one thing you need to be aware of. You'll see when we go into idle, I think it's the low pitch mode of the props just creating a lot of drag. Might be wrong, but the speed just tanks off when you go completely into idle. So just be careful of that. Well, actually, it's not the low pitch mode because that doesn't happen in flight idle. That happens in ground idle. But I think it's just the drag of the props that makes you lose speed so quickly. Right, but we're coming up to Auckland now. No speed brakes in this aircraft, but we've got idle, which is almost like having the speed brakes out because of how hectic the deceleration is, which is what I'm using now because we had quite a bit of a picture over there. Oh, we've got a nice tailwind now. It's pushing us along as well. Bunch of other aircraft out there. I don't know, are they landing in Auckland or they're just taking off? There's two very close to each other. Right, I'm talking and not concentrating on the altitude. We're through 10,000 feet. Through 10,000 feet. Okay, landing lights are on, altimeters are set, cabin altitude, not the landing altitude, the cabin altitude is fine though. Ah, that's why we're descending so quickly. We're not in VNAV anymore for some reason. Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure when or why we went out of VNAV and into pitch hold, but that's why we were dropping like a stone. Okay, that's a bit better now. I think that aircraft must have taken off. That one's climbing. Another one on the ground. That one could be in the go-around because it doesn't appear to be climbing. So we might be in for a little bit of a mess with AI traffic when we get to Auckland. Oh, there's another one straight in front of us as well. Okay, we can start slowing down now for our approach. Right, has it tuned our radio automatically? It doesn't appear to have done so. So let's just do it quickly, make life easier. Oh no, wrong keypad. So we want 110.30. Okay, so that is set. Right, we need to bring speed down even more. Okay, so he's pretty much on final now. I don't see anyone else. Might be okay when it comes to traffic. bumpy here over the mountains. Okay, and there we're starting our turn now for the final approach, or at least to intercept the ILS. Do is go into heading mode here, and let's flip over our nav source to ILS. We're a little high, so let's bring our altitude down, and we can on approach, let's bring it down to 2000 so we can intercept the ILS, and we can go flaps 15. I just want to increase that descent rate. Oh, the yaw damper's off. That's interesting. Increase our descent rate a bit so we can intercept the ILS, or intercept the glide slope. Oh, and we are way off. Okay, let's dial our course up to 51. That's 55. 51. Okay, I think we might have to go manual here, because otherwise we're not going to line up properly. Somehow we're going to have to hand fly this and do the before landing checklist, so that's going to be interesting. Okay, we're on the localizer. Let's get the gear down. Get the second notch of flaps now. We were a little bit fast actually to do that. Final stage of flaps. Can put in a bit of power. Okay, we're pretty good on the glide slope. It is a little bumpy, and like I said before, this aircraft is quite twitchy at this stage. Okay, coming up to minimums. Continue, we're a little fast. Reverse in, which keeps stopping. Okay, so I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with the reverse, because there we have reverse and then it disengages, but that's okay because we are safely down. And we're going to exit here. Is this Alpha? Oh wow, we went even further than I thought. We went Alpha 3, but it makes sense. It's because, yeah, I'm not sure what happened with the reverse. I gauged it a few times and then it just stopped. So I'll have to test that out. Oh, there's a Air New Zealand Q300. I feel like the landing wasn't too bad. Maybe floated a little bit. But yeah, the reverse just didn't do what I wanted it to do. Which is weird, because on my test flight it worked okay, so it might be something with my setup that I need to figure out. Okay, so we're at Alpha 3 now. We're going to go left here on Alpha, and then second right on Bravo 5 into the domestic apron. Let's go and turn off these and that and turn that on, and we'll bring the flaps up as well. Okay, so this is Bravo 3 over here. We're going to pass Bravo 4 and then take the next one right, which is Bravo 5, which takes us straight into the domestic... Did I say domestic apron? I meant domestic terminal, which is actually where that Q300 is going, it looks like, as well. That's actually exactly where he's going. Okay, we didn't actually do the before landing checklist because too much was happening, but we can do after landing. So radar, we didn't actually turn on. Flight controls, we can put in the gust lock. Flaps are up. Trim is set back to 0. Okay, I don't want to miss the taxiway here. Right, I think... Oh, that Q300 went that way. Okay, this is Bravo 5, so this is where we need to turn. Landing and strobe lights are off, anti-ice was off. We can turn off the probes now. And TRU should be off. Which I can't actually look at right now. This is why I need 2 pilots. So I wonder where he's going to park then. Oh, he's going to one of those small parkings. Did he just go in there? Oh no, he's taxiing all the way to the end. But we should probably go and park, not at one of these big domestic gates. We can go to one of the little stands out here next to the Q300s. That's what we'll do. Because these are domestic, but you can see they've got... There shouldn't be an American Airlines CRJ. We'll just ignore that. But... and New Zealand A320 makes sense. So those are the big domestic gates. We'll take one of the smaller ones down here next to these guys. Wow, how do we actually get in here? Oh, did they come from that side? Oh, my wings are going to hit that if I go down there. Guaranteed. Is that another... It is another ATR down there. Okay, I'm gonna turn in here and see if we can figure out how to get into one of those stands. Oh, there's more on this side that we can take. What if we take this one right here, where there's a marshaller to tell us where to stop? Is he actually marshalling? No. Just standing on the side, but we can do that. See if we keep our nose wheel on this line. That should put us in here nicely. That works. And we'll figure out on our own where to stop. Like so. Put in the parking brake. Right, let's turn this off. Parking brake is set. Okay, then this guy we can go to shut off, and this guy to FTR for now. And while it's there at FTR, that would still be spinning, which is correct. We go and put in the prop brake, and that should now stop spinning. Cool. And now we can turn off the beacon light. And let's go and get this guy in the tail prop. Right, so we'll come down here. Naturally, in real life, it'll take them a while to go and put the tail prop, so we'd go through the rest of this, turning that off. Then maybe we can just do ground power here, and then we can actually shut down the engine completely. So let's go over to the ground power. Ooh, this I never put back, that's bad. And then we can actually shut the engine down completely. And now we can turn off the seatbelt signs. Come down here, open up the doors. We'll get the chocks in as well. Right. Let's do the parking checklist. So before landing is going to stay there because we never did it, but anyway. That's set. Those are off. That we've actually turned off already because we're using ground power. That's on standby. That's in position, and seatbelts are off. Let's go down because we're leaving the aircraft. I'm not sure where you'd actually turn the oxygen off, but that's okay for now. That's something we'll go through later on. That's not worried about. We can now turn off then the nav lights, I guess. Emergency exit light disarm. And we can turn... Oh, I didn't turn the seatbelt sounds off. I turned off the no devices. Great job. Okay, radar's off. That's been shut down. We can turn off the fuel pumps. Cockpit doors we can unlock. External power we now need to switch off, actually. Obviously we wouldn't do this so quickly in real life because we would wait for everyone to finish boarding. That's done, and then we switch off the battery. And we can't finish that checklist. Okay, but here we are, safe and sound. Look at that, I almost stopped bang on. Without any marshaller telling me where to stop. Okay, but that is going to bring us to the end of the flight. Welcome to Auckland, New Zealand. What a cool first flight in the ATR 72-600. I think there's a couple of bugs that in the FMS that need to be fixed with the aircraft, but other than that, a very cool add-on, particularly considering the price. So again, if you're okay flying an aircraft that doesn't have auto throttle and you're happy to do all of that yourself, I think you will probably enjoy this aircraft. I certainly have enjoyed it so far. I'm going to try and do more in-depth videos on it on the channel where we try and go through as realistic procedures as we can. Obviously, I'm not a real pilot and I have no experience in the ATR, but that's the plan going forward. Anyway, if you made it to this part of the video, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed checking out the ATR, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do down below, and I'll see you in the next one.